The security of having a home provides the stability of both reassurance and comfort that you have a foundation on which to stand. However, in the province of Ontario, they're experiencing a significant homeless crisis which must be addressed promptly. Specifically, it is estimated by the Association of Municipalities of Ontario that between 80,000 and 234,000 people across the province are experiencing homelessness currently and without significant investment in addressing the problem through intervention. The homelessness crisis across Ontario could even double or triple throughout the coming years. The association also indicates that the homelessness crisis has increased by as much as 25% since 2022. It's also important to note that the majority of those who are homeless across the province are classified as being chronically homeless, which is defined by being homeless for at least a year or repeatedly within the last 3 years. One organization that's trying to put a dent in this troubling trend is my friends at the Backdoor Mission. The Backdoor Mission operates the Mission United Project, which is a low-barrier access hub for essential support, social services, and primary health care. Mission United provides wraparound support services to individuals in the Durham region who are experiencing homelessness, housing insecurity, mental health, and addiction concerns, along with access to food challenges. They rely on the generosity of their volunteers and community to provide those in the Durham region with the best care possible. And Nathan Gardner is Backdoor Mission's executive director. He's got a passion for team building and inspiring others to reach the fullest heights of their own potential, including volunteers, staff, coaching, and professional development roles. His core values are rooted in the philosophy of servant leadership, with an emphasis on teamwork and collaboration. And Gardner joined me this week to have a conversation about the important work of the Backdoor Mission, how we can end homelessness across the province if we all work together, and how we can provide a sense of security to everyone across the province living in a world free of both homelessness, addiction, and food insecurity. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Nathan, if you're ready, my friend, I'll take a few seconds to welcome you to the program on this Friday, and I'm excited to learn all about the important work that you do at the Backdoor Mission. Great to see you this morning, and thanks for a few minutes, my friend.
No problem, anytime.
Absolutely no. I know that the Backdoor Mission operates the Mission United project, my friend, and you aimed at things like homelessness and addiction to wraparound services, my friend, within the Durham region. So I'm wondering if you could tell me about the backdoor mission and all of the important work that you do every day when you go into the office, my friend.
Yeah, no problem. So the backdoor mission, like many missions across the world, started from the Simcoe Street United Church in the late '90s, and it was really just as it says, it was a way to give service to a community in need, literally out the back door. So it started with just a food meal program run completely by volunteers. Progressed as the need continued through the early 2000s to begin to do a little bit more service and respite and navigation. And then the organization actually incorporated in 2014 as its own nonprofit. They became more sophisticated, more need, more clients, more everything. Trans or fast track up until 2020. And of course, when COVID hit, the most of the services for this population they weren't available because the organizations providing them weren't open. They were gone virtual, and we were in a pandemic, and that didn't work for our people. So the mission was one of the spaces that said, "Yep, we will be open. We will see people. We'll gown up. We'll go with all public health measures." And then what happened was a lot of those organizations that provide the service started saying, "Can we come there?" And we asked, "Can you come here?" Because things like healthcare, financial services, mental health, crisis support, harm reduction, everything really, they couldn't serve their clients because they couldn't see their clients. And so what formed was what's known as the Mission United program that is now funded through Canadian Mental Health Association. And really it's what's known as an integrated care hub, but also it's an approach to service that's grounded in relationships and community, and being able to give accessible services to those that need it. And the thing I always say is that it's really, really unique. All of the organizations, or most, I should say, that are located here, they exist within about a 1 kilometer radius of our location. And it's not the service, it's the approach that our clients who are mired in homelessness, addictions, mental health crises, they are coming here because of that feeling of community, even though the same or similar service exists in a very close proximity.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the reasons that the hub was created, I know, was you want to make sure that your clients, to the best of your ability, only have to tell their story once. And I think that's one of the unique things about the way that you operate. And I'm curious if you can shed some light on how important that is, that your clients only have to go through telling their story just at one time. How important do you think that is?
I think it's incredibly important. I think we look at gaps in service of all kinds, and that's a major gap, because what a gap leads to, from a planning standpoint or a system standpoint, is an incremental percentage increase or decrease, and that would be an increase in failures and a decrease in success. So what that means is every time a client has to do that, there's more of a chance they'll be frustrated. There's more of a chance that they will lose a little bit of hope. And there's less of a chance that they're going to get the service that they need in that moment. So it's important from a human standpoint, because a person has to experience feeling heard. And when you have to do that over and over again, you question, was I really heard the first time? And then from a system experience, it just makes it more efficient, because when you have an engaged and hopeful individual, which is so important to their journey, you have more of a chance of success, whatever that might be. If it's just getting them shelter that day, if it's housing them, if it's providing them the care and medicine that they need to increase their lives, more income, more stabilization, all of those things. They are better and they're more successful when an individual has hope and is engaged. And when they tell their story multiple times, that happens less and less and less. So, there's the easy, obvious human answer, but there's, I think, the more important, I shouldn't say more important, but the other answer, which is it just creates more successful outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nathan, I'm curious to get your opinion and thoughts on some statistical information from the Association for Municipalities of Ontario that reported this year that more than 81,000 people across the province are experiencing homelessness, my friend, which is a 25% increase from 2022, indicates that more than 41,000 people are experiencing a chronic homelessness, my friend. So my question to you is, what do you make of those numbers and the investment it'll take to end homelessness throughout the province? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, I mean, clearly the first thoughts is for those that work in the industry, those are numbers that confirm what we already know. And whether they're individual reports or aggregated or local point in time counts, it's almost a unanimity across both the province and country, North America. There are pockets of success. There are small cities and places where interventions have led to a decrease, but those are few and far between. And the reality is, post-COVID, post-economic turn, just look at housing prices, post opioid crisis, I shouldn't say post, but during, all those contributing factors, we know that the percentage is not just increased, it's increasing to the point where it's not just outpacing current staff's ability. Unfortunately, it's outpacing the plans that were put in place by both the provincial and federal government and local communities. So, the Built for Zero campaign and the campaigns and national strategies that have been put in place and the way that those are executed locally, most of them were very intricate, detailed, and planned out, and very challenging, even though they were really well done. A lot of them. I think that they were a challenge to begin with, and they were done so with a very different climate. And so one of the things that report can hopefully indicate is our planning from a local and provincial level and all the way up. It needs immediate review because the things that are in place, while not bad, they were just meant for a different climate. And in terms of investment, I mean, I think there's not anybody that works in this sector, or really most communities, that doesn't believe a further investment is needed to help solve this thing. It's just a matter of where does that go, and what's the best way forward. And the thing I would say is, I believe those investments need to be heavily dichotomized to both short and long term. And so the thing that we need obviously access to is immediate care and housing. Like, people need more medical, mental health, care, community-based support right now, and that's not complex. It's difficult, but not complex. And people need more housing. So the best way we can invest in more different types of affordable housing, whether it's purpose-built, government-built, whether it's things that help incentivize private builds that are appropriate, or anything in between, nonprofits getting more into housing. Those are all immediate things, but also investment in longer term strategies is extremely important, because when we do those short term things, there's always residual impact and there's always changes. And so we need to kind of plan as a community sector of all the impacts that could occur when we make these short-term investments. I mean, that's really what I see. But across the board, I think everybody knows we need to invest. It's really just getting clear on what we all know and believe, or what we all believe where those investments should go.
Yeah, absolutely. And building on your comments on affordable housing, the association also reported that there are currently about 268,000 people across the province who are on waiting lists for affordable housing, my friend. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on building on the keys to making a dent in that wait list and how we can form more relationships and partnerships to reduce those wait lists, my friend. What do you think is the key there?
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, wait lists, especially RGI lists, that's not, giant year-long wait list is not something that's new. That is one thing that has kind of carried over from years past. And now there are newer wait lists for those who are part of coordinated, I mean, at least locally, part of coordinated access systems who are just looking for any type of housing, as well as those who are, their wait list for shelters now. Everything is backlogged to wait list. I think, I may not be the perfect one to answer this, but in my opinion, like, I don't think we should turn up our nose at any type of housing development. And I believe that time spent on trying to determine what the absolute best course of action in terms of developing new affordable housing options is time that we can't afford right now, and we need to kind of explore everything. And so those are options that have worked elsewhere: co-ops, nonprofit investment. Again, not government purpose built, government build. Like, we haven't done that in this country for a long time. And, I think all of those things, what we really should do is do it all, do it now, invest heavily, but also critically assess. And so what that would do is hopefully backlog the wait list to some degree. I don't think that a lot of those lists, people should prepare that they're probably not going to be to a functional zero or to a low rate in any time soon. But what we really should do is make those immediate investments and start those projects as soon as possible with a real intent focus on invest or assessment. And when I say assessment, whether it's recidivism rates, whether it's returning into homelessness rates, whether it's compounding well-being as part of those studies, like, those are all extremely important things to know which of these projects worked. I think a lot of the time, I don't want to just say governments, but I think a lot of the time, sectors, community, we champion and celebrate housing achievements without thinking about the next stages, which is, was this thing really successful? And we need to really think about the success, the assessment of those successes before and while we are investing in them.
Yeah, absolutely. Nathan, I'm also curious to ask you this morning. When you work with people, I'm curious what it means to you to provide them with a sense of dignity of purpose when they come to access the services that you provide. So, what do you think is the definition of dignity of purpose within the backdrop of the work that you do every day? What do you think that means to you?
So that's a great question. I will say, with my current work, obviously as the executive director, it is more my staff now, and I have a background in history in a lot of frontline work, but it is definitely more my staff. So, these are one of the things I'm speaking for them as best as possible. But of course, anybody working more frontline would have the best insight. But knowing that, one of the things that I do here is ensure we have a lot of volunteer positions. We have 200 people through the door every day. I do try to take the time, one, to step into one of those positions, whether it's handing out coffee or anything else, at least once a week if I can. And then I also ensure that I watch the operation to make sure that we not in a critical sense, but to remind myself just how great of work our people are doing. And so, the thing that I would really answer, the thing that really rings through for dignity of an individual is that they feel a part of a community. And so that community could be as small as two or three, could be bigger. It doesn't have to be geographically located. It doesn't have to be defined by, a map or anything else. or something that's profile demographic, a race or a gender or anything else. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. So to me, when an individual feels like they are a part of something, and they are part of something that other people have an interest in, and then they have a vested interest in an empathetic and almost a colleague vested interest in them as a person. And then they feel more the sense of what you've called and what you say as dignity, because they are respected and they are a part of something. I mean, I really truly believe that when people lose that dignity, they've lost that sense of community. They are somewhere, either mentally or physically or both, where they don't have a sense of belonging. And community really drives home that in this place, in this moment, and with these people, I belong. I belong to something more, where I feel a we, but I also feel an I as an individual. So, we do that through, we have a theory of change model, which is really just why we believe the way that we work will make the change that we are trying to achieve. And, there's a lot of different words and a lot of different great things on there and columns and whatnot. But at the very top is that we believe in a relationship built model that is built completely on trust. And so no matter what, every meeting that I have hammered home when people are worried about their role definitions, what do I do? What do I say? Am I stepping on toes? All the normal organizational things. It is everybody's job and duty to build relationships, because that's what provides that dignity with individuals, that they come here and then they know they're a person. And so I think that, if we're looking at what dignity is, it's being a part of something. If we're looking at how do we deliver that as an organization or as just a person or as a place, it's by focusing first on a relationship with that individual.
Yeah, and Nathan, I'm talking to you this morning from Windsor, and Windsor, Ontario, has the second highest unemployment rate across the province at 10.7%, my friend. And I know that access to equitable employment opportunities is something that you also help people to get assistance with. So I'm curious to ask you about your opinion on the importance of giving those who serve access to equitable employment, and how important that is when we talk about the puzzle you try to solve each and every day.
Well, I think I'd be more. The reality of the clients that we serve is the hub and the mission really focuses on stabilization. So if you can imagine, and we know this because in Oshawa here, very similar issues to Windsor. We also there is a treatment center located in Windsor that a lot of our clients have. Shouldn't say a lot. A number of our clients have gone to and returned from. So definitely very familiar with the area and the needs. But for us, like, you have to really picture the clients that come through the mission doors. We focus on what's called comorbidities or trimorbidities, which, if people don't know, that is different functions or different characteristics of an individual situation that contribute to their likelihood of death. And, for us, almost all of our clients have a combination and complexities of being homeless and chronically homeless, which means for a long time. They also have complex mental health needs, which is usually in they have a psychosis sometimes, think of schizophrenia or bipolar or those types of things. And they also have substance use issues. So you combine those things together, and that individual, before things like employment are even a thought, it's often months and sometimes years of stabilization through access to primary and ongoing health care, housing needs, mental health needs. There's a lot that goes through with our clients. And I think within our system, a lot of what's done on the employment end is trying to work with partners to provide that. But two things. A lot of our great success stories are individuals who have been at the rock bottom. And in fact, I don't think they mind me saying this, but a couple few of our board members are people with lived experience that are some of the highest achievers, I would say, in our sector right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the important thing from an organizational standpoint is that when we provide employment, an individual's past is viewed more as a strength. And so, what that means to us, I'll say this: we had one individual, one employee I remember who did a police record check for us, and they were within a peer program, and they were working with individuals with addictions, and they were very nervous to provide it to me, and then had a lot of things like, "Hey, I just want you to know this was here, and I have an explanation for this, etc." And there was a rap sheet, and then my response to this individual was, in my opinion, this is what qualifies you for your job. It doesn't exclude you from your job. So I think, to me, an important aspect of equitable employment is understanding strengths and understanding an individual, their background is not a statistical red flag, but it could be a benefit dependent on the situation. So we take that into account all the time with our employment standards with our current employees. And then the last part is just, I think one of the things we're trying to get more into, one of the troubles that the mission has had is COVID created such a service-based model for us, which was so needed. Like, people in our clients needed just straight service to get through and to survive pandemic world. And we're more transitioning things like providing programming now. And one of those things is employment requires training. One of the great models I know of, if you know the organization Blue Door, their construct model is incredible. So they take people who are part of their shelter program, and they offer for them to take part in job skills training, particularly in the trades. We've hired them before. They come in and actually take part after training and doing contract work, and that gives them skills and entry into employment. There are ways that you can do that within your organization, no matter what it does. Every place has cleaning. You can use clients or former clients, volunteers, to do those types of services while providing them training, and also in a peer role, like you can have people who are part of programs begin to lead programs. That's something that we're starting to layer into our work a lot more. But in all those things considered, I think equity to job opportunities, equity to training, and understanding people's diverse backgrounds can be a benefit. The last thing I would say on it in terms of overall economic unemployment rates is, we need to begin to really view the community sector and community care work as potential employment opportunities, because we haven't as an economy, and it's extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely. And, last year, at the beginning of this year, Nathan, the government also released what they call the evidence brief on homelessness and health outcomes report. And it highlighted that 77% of homelessness individuals across the province have experienced one or more mental health issues, with alcohol dependency and addiction being at the top of the list. So my question to you in that realm, my friend, would be, what do you think will take to sort of combat both alcoholism, dependency on drugs, and homelessness? And what do you think is the first step to assisting these individuals to get back on track? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a easy answer. It's a complex answer for sure, and it's a lot of work. And the other thing is, I know those numbers have increased. The last time we did a point in time count that I was a part of, I think 2018 or 2019, those numbers were closer to 55%. And, that's a local report, but I'm pretty sure that is definitely an increase due to the complexities of substances. But, I think the answer is more partnerships, and that sounds like something that's easy to say, but I can tell you, we're living it. We have 11 different organizations, and they all have different mandates, different services, skill sets, and then layer that on volunteers. Um, Partnerships is something that it's one of those easy or quicker to do yourself, better to do, but together as an easy answer. It'll take longer and it's much more difficult to establish processes. So what I mean is, you're talking about healthcare and substance use, and then layer in the last questions around economic indicators, job status, and housing. Those things are all different, but they're completely intertwined. And they also require different expertise and skill sets. And I think if we believe, well, we have to build this and it's going to have a one-stop shop, but it's going to be one type of employee or person that works on all of those components is pretty myopic. I think we need to understand on our sector, whether it's governments or the community service or healthcare nonprofit sector, we need to really, really do a deep dive in understanding each other's skill sets because, the answer probably looks like if you're building your perfect scenario. In fact, actually, I think the Dunn House in just built recently in Toronto by Dr. Andrew Borzi is probably the best example right now that's local. A physical space where everybody gets all their needs met that's in the scenario. It is one of the 77%. It's one space that provides that dignity. It provides them the autonomy, but it also has the security and support of food security. They get access to healthcare. They get mental health support and psychiatric care, and then they have housing. They have dignity. They have food. They have the psychiatric requirements and the health primary care requirements, and then everything else layered on top of that. But all those things of the people who are providing it, if you provide those things with the experts, they probably have different views and different opinions on what's needed and what has to be done. And it's coming from a more of a siloed approach, meaning a siloed profession approach. So, I mean, interprofessional knowledge is I think the next step in really understanding what we need to do to really hone in on providing care and success for complex individuals. We don't connect and we don't learn about all the professional needs and expertise. You're gonna see less success. So I think interprofessional practice and knowledge, that's what's needed because they're complex individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one of my, I'm going to share just a little bit about myself. One of my favorite musicals, my friend, is Dear Evan Hansen. And one of my favorite songs in that musical is the song Waving Through a Window. And I think it applies to the work that you do every day because it talks about social inclusion, getting out of isolation, and wondering if your contributions to society are realized. And I'm curious to ask you, in the context of breaking down barriers of inclusion, what do you think it means for the clients that you serve every day to sort of wade through that window of inclusion and break down barriers to access? What are your thoughts there?
Ooh, well, I mean, that's a doozy because that's a big one, A lot of the other stuff we're talking about, direct solutions, whether they're complex or not. We need more healthcare, we need more housing, and here's how I think or someone thinks it has to be delivered. In terms of inclusion, God, there's so much complexity within what that means to each person in each community. I think that, excuse me, sorry, feel that coming.
Bless you.
Thank you. I think that someone once said to me that our people are in the situation they're in because they don't or can't respond to structure, and our our culture, our world is kind of obsessed with structure. And, don't get me wrong, structure can do incredible things and it can achieve incredible results. But, when 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 those results they can come at the expense of somebody who cannot or is not participating in those structures, the way that they are intended. And so that leads to exclusion. That can be anything from a sports team, right? Like, I'm a sports guy, so if we play a certain way, we do it a certain way. This is how we practice. This is how we play. There could be a great player that doesn't do it that way. They do something different. My favorite athlete of all time is Steve Nash, the basketball player. And if he adhered to the structure of how you're supposed to be a point guard and play basketball, he wouldn't never have achieved the success that he does, because he brought a level of creativity. He brought, I'd say, poetry. He brought pace to the sport of basketball, and it was something that transformed the game. And you know what? Sometimes when we have structures, they lead to that exclusion and they need transformation. So for our people, specifically, we have one real, I have an important advocacy bullet, which is trying to change the language around behavior to symptoms, and you can combine them to call it symptomatic behavior, right? So when we see an individual that's in one of our clients, existing in the world that they do, which is the structure of a public space or a downtown space or an urban space, a park, an encampment, a street, an alleyway. Those are things that are structurally designed for a specific use, a road. But because of our people's situations, they don't fit in the current structure. And sometimes what is seen as behavior really is a symptom. It's a symptom of both the societal structure, but it's also a symptom of their mind and their health. And so, when we know and understand that and are conscious of it, it's not like, I'm not a anarchist that says we got to break down all the structures, but there is a clear need for what about these systems and these things that we've done, which again could be a sports team, it could be the way that we administer support and service economically to individuals, or it could be the way that we design our cities. In fact, that's extremely important. Those are things that, how do they exclude everybody? And when I say everybody, I mean seniors, children, people of color, people of sexual orientation, anything. How do they include and how do they exclude? And I mean, I think that the kind of key concept to keep in mind is when there's something that presents a challenge or somebody that's different that we hear and recognize doesn't really fit into our current, how do we add on? And how do we add on efficiently? Instead of how does this disrupt our current situation? And how does this, provide more of a nuisance to what we currently do? I think, if you don't mind, I'll give you an example. My father was a teacher, and of course, teaching in Southern Ontario in a rural community, most of his students in the 90s were both white and Christian. And, he had, I actually can't remember the student, but the parent came in and says, well, we don't adhere to this. We're trying to do, you have this whole curriculum in December based on Christmas. We don't believe that, and we don't, want to, it's challenging for us, for our kid to participate. And instead of saying what a lot of time we believe inclusion means is, okay, well, we won't have Christmas. We won't have holiday-based support or curriculum here. He asked the parents, okay, well, tell me about what it is your religion is, and tell us about how we can include it as part of what we do. And would you be willing to participate in what we do already if it's modified to include? And they said absolutely. And it meant more work for him. He had to stay later. He had to do extra stuff. But it meant that individual was included. And it's a small pocket example of the way that we really should view those situations when occurs. Okay, what else? How do we add on? And how do we do it together? And how do we do it so it's not a burden?
Yeah, absolutely. And David, I've got two questions left for you in terms of our conversation, and they're both two-part questions. So, if you'll indulge me for a moment, I want to talk to you about the idea of accountability and trust, because I know that your staff have spent a lot of time in the organizations that work within the hub, spend a lot of time sort of trying to establish a relationship of both reliability and trust for the people that you serve. So I'm curious about connecting the dots between accountability, trust, and reliability. How do you think those are all interconnected, my friend?
Accountability, trust, and reliability. Well, accountability it's a tricky word because you have to understand there's a positive and negative to that because depending on how you interpret it, it can be weaponized, and but also it's extremely important for all of our progress. And really, in order to do that, it needs to be grounded in trust and reliability. It's interesting you say both trust and reliability because to me, trust is, I think it's oversimplified. So when we say we need more trust, we need to be able to trust each other. There are different ways that we can trust, reliability being one of them. So I think that's intertwined. This person is extremely reliable. But do you trust that individual? Maybe it can also be a concept of their ability, not just reliability. So do I trust you to be on time? Do I trust you to be a good person? Yes. Do I trust you to perform surgery on me? Probably not if you don't have the skill set, right? So there are different layers of how we can trust somebody. And then truth is within there as well, right? Honesty, extremely important one. I think how they relate to accountability, and you didn't specify, but it's up to me to interpret. Is that our client's accountability? Is that us? Is that a shared accountability? I think it's really important that all those words that I've mentioned, they're all kind of shared. Whoever we're working with, they're shared in terms of our understanding, right? So this question is a great example. If we really want to get into layer of what accountability means, I think you and I would have to get a great definition. We'd have to share our definition of what trust means to us, and then that would inform whether or not we could be or will be accountable to each other. Because, I mean, quite frankly, and I've seen it all the time, it happens a lot. A lack of accountability is really just a lack of a proper communication. So I think in terms of accountability, we say those types of words without getting into a deep understanding of what that means. And when they say a government has to be accountable to its citizens, and they have an accountability for the homelessness crisis. Well, sure, to a degree. My organization has accountability to both our clients and to our community. We have impact. We go over that all the time. Are we being accountable? Are we held accountable to what we say and promise that we do? And how does that jive with our clients and our accountability to them? Do they have accountability to society, to each other, to us? When we say you have to in order to, and that could be things like you have to meet timelines, meet guidelines, meet deadlines, follow the law, follow procedures in order to be given the supports and structures that you need. I mean, is that fair? And to what length is it fair if it is? I think like to me, all those things, in a hopefully a shorter answer, they're all required. There is accountability that's needed within all of those things that I mentioned, but it requires more than one entity, a person or an organization. And so when there's more than one, you need to be able to understand between those multiple entities what accountability actually means and what those other terms mean before you can, when I say enforce them, but before you can, I guess enforce is a way to put it.
Yeah, and another sort of pillar of what you do every day within your staff is doing your best to bridge the digital divide as we move more towards digital applications. I know that the large part of what you do is about stabilizing people, and a part of that is vaulting them into the digital age as best you can with the resources you have. So I'm curious to ask you about bridging the digital divide when you work with people and how important that is. And then finally, what's your greatest hope for eradicating homelessness across the province, my friend?
Yeah, well, well, they're all interesting questions, but for sure, the digital piece is, oh man, that is there's a real ambivalent answer to that because, um, I think we utilize it every day. I mean, especially everybody, but us as well as an organization, we're really trying to understand the uses of AI and how that can aid us in our work in a nonprofit world. I think there's a really, really important use for AI, as long as we understand it. And then the other part of the digitization, of course, is whether it's administrative and structural digitization, which are things like forms, or it's communication, and which is things like, I mean, just I'll say the internet and social media, but then also things like belonging. That's where it gets really tricky. So I actually don't think, from a client standpoint, and really in anybody's standpoint, I don't believe that digitization is necessary or required in order to obtain the well-being and the quality of life that we think is important to people. Like I think you can eradicate digitization and go off the grid and still maintain a really great quality of life. And there are pockets of the world where they exist within extreme poverty, but their quality of life is actually, I should say, their quality of life, but their happiness and well-being is higher than people in developed worlds that have access to lots of digital advantages. But we utilize it, and it's really important for us to connect. It's extremely, it gives us more knowledge. It gives us more ability. People that might not have had the ability to participate in the world now can in a new way. I remember during COVID, we did a lot of research in my old position and working on a lot of reports and papers. And it was really interesting because, in that virtual world, I was able to learn and connect with people all across the country. And I'd never done that before. Like I'd never experienced, being able to learn from and network and participate in really a cathartic and meaningful way with people in Vancouver and Newfoundland and Nova Scotia and all over Ontario. It was really great. So there is a great use of the digital world. How we integrate our clients into that, or people who are, whether they're just straight Luddites or they just don't have the access. That's important for us to do in a very ethical way. But in terms of its necessity, I actually don't think it's necessary, and we probably need to reevaluate what that means to us before what well-being means to us before we enter the digital world too fast. The second part, what do I believe is needed to eradicate homelessness? I mean, I used to answer that question with a variation of, it's complex and economic this and structural that, government political buy-in. I really just think it's community. One of my mentors really focused his work throughout his life in social planning on the development of the community sector, and I call myself a community development professional. And I really think, that it's interesting. The digital world, one of the things I believe it has had a residual impact on is our communities. I think we do less community gathering, not none, but I think we do less community gathering and less community understanding. And we look to entities and structures to solve our issues and solve them in a very linear way. And what I mean is, here's a problem. Let's say let's call who we need to and call it out to be able to fix it. And that doesn't take in the complexities of everybody that lives within that and what that problem means to them. Homelessness is just one example. It's probably the biggest example. We need to be able to engage as communities to understand each other and know in order to develop our solutions. Because the reality is the real solutions are not easy. They take lots of conversation and um, they take lots of emotional and conflicting conversations with each other. Like that's how name any issue. That's how it's broken down, and that's what we need more than anything. Like, if we're going to get more money from the government, they need to understand that the whole community is behind this idea. If they respond to private sector, a business sector, a nonprofit sector, a community entity, or population without knowing that the whole community is really a part of that or believes in it, they're just going to probably create another issue down the road that they haven't seen yet. And the best way to ensure that doesn't happen or mitigate it is to know that we're all behind and committed to a same idea, or at least we understand each other.
Yeah, just before I ask you how people can get involved with the backdoor mission if they're inclined to do so, you brought something up that I wanted to follow up with, and that's the role of the government in this equation of ending homelessness, addiction, and all the rest. And the new prime minister talked a lot about nation building and building a stronger Canada within several sectors. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on what do you think the new government needs to do in terms of affordable housing and homelessness and addiction, and what does nation building mean to you in terms of the work that you do every day? I'm curious to get your answer.
Yeah, well, when you ask that and you say the term government, again, that's one of those understanding things because in our world, I think of public administrators, bureaucrats, and people who work for the government. And a lot of people think of who they see on TV and who they read about, which is politicians. And the answer is both. But knowing what the differences between those two things is really important to what you've asked, which is nation building. I think I heard at a conference somebody say one time, I've always had a little bit of a skewed vision of bureaucracy, but this actually changed my thinking. They said, somebody asked me, why would I want to be a bureaucrat? Why would you want to do that work? And her response was, you mean, why would I want to ensure that our public dollars, which is your money and my money and everybody's money, is used appropriately to solve the problems that we all experience? Yeah, that's why I would want to be a bureaucrat. And I'm like, well, that's a great perspective of bureaucracy but it's true. I think, in terms of nation building, to harken back to what I've said about community, I think governments, which includes those who work as public officials and those who are elected officials, really, really need to focus on the engagement and the understanding of all communities, right? And so, Carney I don't know if he did already or is planning to take the trip out west, and that was a big news item. And, the trip out west means, I kind of envision that as you're probably meeting with a lot of, a version of groups, and one of those groups is probably advocating for investment into the oil and gas sector and pipelines and things like that. And it's extremely important for a leader to meet with those individuals. Probably the groups, I would hope, includes Indigenous First Nations people, because they're in those provinces. They are extremely plentiful and have really, really complex and important problems. And then probably a version of supporters, people who have given him his mandate and given the Liberals their mandate, and those who, are doing the type of work and type of service that they believe in. They believe that he supports or his government supports or a version of that. And I think what would to me, what's nation building is you don't go to each three of those separately and hear their concerns without making sure that they do those things together. If you're thinking of it's as simple as one person representing all those three entities, they get to talk to the prime minister and have him hear them. As leaders, one of the things you say when you have conflict is, and I say it all the time, depending on the nature of it, of course, but if they say this person did A or B or C or said this and this is happening, my response is, what did you say? What did they say when you brought this to them? And so our nation building has to have a version of that. Like, it has to proactively facilitate and bring those individuals together so that they understand what the problems are, because we're not going to have a path forward if we don't do it. I think the challenge within that is we have a political structure which limits your time and your ability to do that, but someone's got to have the leadership to know that it's going to be hard and take a lot of time and tough conversations, and it may be beyond my mandate and it may be beyond my term, but that's what's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Nathan, as I say goodbye to you this morning, my friend, I'm wondering if you could tell me if people want to get connected to the Backdoor Mission, my friend. What is the best way they can do that?
Well, yeah, thank you for that. They can contact me anytime, and Gardner, Gardner at backdoormission.ca. You can flood me with emails if you like, or on LinkedIn. And then we have other staff as too. But the best way, of course, is to go through www.backdoormission.ca. The one thing I'd recommend on the first page there, if you want to learn more about what we do, take the virtual tour. It's right on the front page. Go and look and then begin to ask questions, because while we provide service to this community, we're also doing a ton of work that we believe can impact beyond. There's a lot about the work that the mission does that is not just Oshawa or Durham specific. It is conceptual and can bleed into a lot of other cities and other communities are going through. And the best thing that we've done was connect with other groups that are doing similar work and find out how we can change. If you want to volunteer, biggest thing we can do, obviously, we're a nonprofit. So if you're looking for ways to invest, I don't say donate, but you invest in us, because we got a lot of great future ahead. We can find that on the page, or connect with me as well. So again, backdoormission.ca and Gardner at backdoormission.ca, best way to do it.
Well, absolutely. Well, Nathan, I have to tell you, I am someone who believes that collaboration is the key to progress, and you're certainly doing your part to eradicate homelessness, addiction, and hunger, my friend, within the Durham and Oshawa regions and all across the province, my friend. I want to thank you for being gracious with your time and engaging in conversation with me this morning on this most important topic. I want to thank you for being here and for your time this morning. It's most appreciated.
Thank you so much for reaching out. It was great.